Hello.
Welcome.
We're in our seed garden here at Vibrant Earth Seeds. And this is our very first time using the YouTube Live, so we don't really know what to expect here. So thanks for hanging with us. But I think how you can interact with us is typing your questions into the chat. So as we go along, and even right now, like if you have questions that you brought with you, feel free to just type them into the chat so we can cover them.
And if you can hear us, or if you can't hear us, maybe type that into the chat to
Oh
let
yeah,
us know that
good
the
idea.
audio is working. It looks like it's working, but we'll speak up if it's hard to hear.
Oh, good. Good morning. So glad you were doing this, Celine. Okay. Hi, Celine.
Awesome. Hi, Celine.
That's fun.
Welcome.
Sweet. It's working. Yeah. And maybe whoever else is on here, you could just type in to introduce yourself so that we have an idea of who's on here. That would be great. Oh, good. You're coming to our seed saving workshop. Perfect. That's great.
Excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, this is our first live stream. We're just trying it out. I think it'll grow over time, and we'll see how it goes. We did list it as public on YouTube, so we'll see if that brings us any challenges or if it's better to do it that way. But we're here to primarily answer any questions that you brought with you about organic gardening and seed saving. We're based in Cortez, right outside of Cortez, Colorado in the Southwest. This is our farm dog, Charlie.
Okay, Charlie, go on.
So our farm is here, and we primarily save seeds and plant seeds that are Southwest adapted, but we were also in the Front Range of Colorado for 10 years, near Boulder, Fort Collins area. So a lot of our seeds are Rocky Mountain adapted, and we do grow a lot of short season seeds for people who are in the mountains, or in shorter, like more northern climates. So that's like the basis of our stuff. A lot of what we tell you will apply to other areas as well, but we have the most experience here. So if you have any questions, just type them in. Otherwise, we'll just start with some basics and go from there and see what questions come up for you. So I think, unless you had a jumping off point.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, we've been collecting seeds in the Rocky Mountain Southwest, as well as a fair amount of our varieties were grown in northern New Mexico and parts of higher parts of Arizona. And so we have a selection of stuff that does well in the mountains, as well as stuff that'll do in the mid-desert of the Southwest. And we've been collecting seeds throughout the area for 20 plus years, really, but intensively a little bit less. But over the past 15 years, we've been doing seed work very intensely, and we love to share what we've learned and give you tips and whatnot. So welcome.
Yeah, and we can do a little garden walkabout too. We won't go through our whole farm because I don't know if we'll get disconnected, but we can do a little squash and sunflower and corn tour around this garden if you'd like. Celine has a question. How do you grow lettuce here without it getting bitter? That's a great question.
Well, primarily lettuce is a spring and a fall crop. So growing lettuce in the middle of summer is probably the most challenging time. So getting it started early, as early as possible. whether you have a greenhouse, to start little starts,
Come on, Charlie.
or just getting it in the ground early on. Excuse our dog.
He wants to be in the video.
And then picking your varieties, varieties that are grown in, the Northwest and stuff, which is a common place where seeds are grown, just because it's really easy to grow seeds there. They will tend to get more bitter when they're in intense sunlight. We just have, even if it's not hot, our sun is intense year round. We have a variety called Anui Nui that our friend from Groundworks, he found and introduced us to it, and that one is particularly good at keeping its flavor. So we're really excited about that. I'm working on crossing it with our spotty troutback as well, and that one we've been very impressed with, the Anui Nui. But,
yeah, that one was bred by the University of Hawaii specifically for heat tolerance. So that's kind of what you want to look for, is lettuce seed that has been bred specifically for heat tolerance, because here in the desert, that's what the main thing is, why it goes bitter so quick.
And then, the other thing is,
she said it got bitter. The spotty troutback got bitter pretty early on.
Yep. Yeah. The Anui Nui will be significantly better. The other thing is just learning how to eat vegetables that aren't like iceberg lettuce. Depending on how we grow up, a lot of people, we're used to things with not much flavor, and the thing about bitters is they help clear out our liver, and after winter, and those flavors, if we could figure out how to do good vinaigrettes or other ways of preparing them with berries or things, then even a good lettuce that isn't bitter, then you can eat it longer as it does start to bolt. So yeah, lettuce is a tough one. If you can cover it with partial shade, that can also help, or a part of the garden that does have partial shade, or even mostly shade. Anywhere where you're growing in more of a shade, things will just grow slower, but they'll maybe be tenderer. So you maybe plant more in a shady spot.
And just plant it early. Like, you can plant it in March. Like, basically as soon as you can work the soil, you can put it in the ground. So if you wait till June to plant it, then it's gonna get better.
Yeah, and there's variations year to year too. Some years are just easier. It's kind of a balance of trying to figure those things out. So that's a very good question, though. Everybody asks, how do you grow good unbitter lettuce? And most people grow them inside in greenhouses, hydroponically, and that's fine if that's what people need to do and want to do. But we're all for outdoor gardening. So
Deb is here too. Hi, Deb. Well, I guess you both are going to be at the workshop then this Saturday, so we can talk in person too.
Yeah,
and that'll be a lot better, because it's funny to read these things and then try to respond. Okay, Deb is growing the lettuce in their greenhouse and hasn't noticed bitterness.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it just needs cover from the full sun is the trick.
Yeah, oftentimes greenhouses have glazing, which prevents some of the UV to come in. So then the lettuce is a little more supple because it doesn't need to protect itself so much.
Yeah. Cheating, yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay. If we have the time and resources, we can do most anything to, make our vegetables year round, or make them more palatable. If that's what we want. primarily our goal is to have vegetables that can grow in any environment. So, then if we baby them a little bit, then they'll grow even better. So.
Yeah, and getting to know like the microclimates on your property, because it took us a couple seasons here to realize like, oh, the field we're in right now, it just gets blasted. It's on the south and there's no surrounding shade, and it's a little bit lower, and then like our upper field is a little bit higher elevation and there's willows and it's by the ditch, so there's like actually a pretty big temperature difference when it comes down to those like border windows, like around the frosts. There was times where things were not freezing down here when they were freezing up there. So now we like plan our crops that way, like knowing that this is kind of like the hot field and that's like the cooler field. It's not much difference, but it'll make a difference if you walk around your property and figure out what the little niches are.
And over the length of the season, 5 degrees makes a tremendous difference for ripening, certain things. You have 5 degrees for, 3 months, and it's, 5 degrees warmer, then your peppers and tomatoes will ripen where they won't in a cooler part of the field. So, the dog's just rolling.
So Deb likes to know what would be best to grow outside right now and what would be better to grow in the greenhouse.
Okay. Well, if you're having luck with lettuce in the greenhouse, lettuce is great. There's a bunch of different kind of mustards, tender mustards that can be good, or arugula could be good in the greenhouse. You might be able to get a final green bean harvest out of the greenhouse. It's maybe pushing it. It depends if you have heat in the greenhouse.
Depends on your greenhouse, yeah.
Or if it's just kind of a season extension greenhouse.
Is it like plastic or is it like glass and you can heat it and stuff? Is it too late to plant the cool weather seeds outside that we got in our first packet?
Swiss chard, kale, lettuce. We're planting those right now.
Yeah.
Swiss chard's a really dependable, hardy one. Lettuce should be fine outside.
Yeah.
I plant even later than this. Depending on the benefit of being a seed saver is you can plant it very thickly and then get microgreens and then small greens and then thin it as it gets bigger, and then it does vary depending on each year. Some years you have a month longer in the season than other years. So yeah, I see peas.
Peas you can plant
peas
now.
We put in. I would put them in now.
Yeah, we just planted those.
And the cool thing about peas is even if you plant them a month from now, you can eat the little tendrils. So the little, I would just try different parts of the tips of the plants, and you'll find there's a certain part of the new shoot off the tips that's really good in salads, and it tastes, it's not quite like a pea. It's sweetness, but it has the same flavor, and it's really good in salads and stuff. So it's just another thing, in the spring, it's like can be some of your earliest greens can be those pea shoots, and then in the fall, you can get them even if you're not going to get fruit. You can plant way late and still get greens.
What about beets and carrots?
Beets and carrots, it kind of depends how warm you are. We're about 5 degrees. I would say our daytime temperatures are a little bit warmer than Cortez. But I had beets and carrots survive the winter last year, and we were picking them throughout the winter, really. So I would get those in. The main thing in gardening is to experiment a little bit. If you don't have a big amount of space or if you have limited time, then experimenting is a little more challenging. But if you have a deep interest in what actually grows at what times, um, the main thing is just putting in a little bit. If you have a pack of seeds and it's got 100 seeds in there or whatever, and you plant 10 of them, then that'll give you a little bit of an idea of, okay, what do you need to do? You can even cover things if you want to extend them. You can put sheets over them or blankets, or it really depends how much effort you want to put into it. But beets and carrots, I think it would be fine. If we get a really early frost, then that might slow them down a little bit, and it might not be till spring that they come back out. But generally, I have beets and Swiss chard and carrots will live the winter. But that said, if you're 10 degrees colder, then they might not live the winter. So
yeah, because up in the Front Range, I don't think the carrots were making it through the whole winter.
Okay.
They would get frozen.
And it depends on their stage going into winter too. Sorry.
Yeah, like the big carrots, I remember they would freeze in the ground, and you'd pull them out and they'd be like an icicle carrot. And then in the spring they would just turn to mush. So that, like, in the Front Range, we would have to pull them out and put them in the root cellar, like, because we're growing for seed. We would have to pull them out and put them in the root cellar in like moist sand or something, and then replant them the next spring in order to get the seed, because those are biennials. But here, that's what we did the first year here, because we were expecting the same thing. But then we realized we had some in the ground still, and those were like totally fine through the whole winter. So now we just leave them in the ground, and then the next spring they go to seed. So it's kind of, we're on like the border of like what you can do, and depending on your microclimates and stuff.
Yeah, and carrots specifically, but beets I would think too. If you have them going into winter and you don't have a place to store them, putting a layer of straw on top, even if they're not growing anymore, if they're, to edible size, you can put a small layer of straw, or you can put a very deep layer of straw, and that'll keep your soil from freezing as early. Yeah, so that's another thing you can do to get things to overwinter, or to extend your harvest, is covering with straw. So.
What other questions do you ladies have? I think it's just you two, so.
Yeah, there was one other person right at first, didn't there?
Was there? Oh.
Yeah,
because I thought the other woman in Utah was going to come on. She might still. Because I just said, like, you can hop on and off whenever you need to. We're just kind of experimenting. This is our first, like, live CSA stream, so we'll see if anyone else shows up. It's kind of annoying that the only option is to type. Like, I would like to see everybody's video, but straw is a good tip.
Yeah, we'd consider doing a Zoom or some other format so that people can interact a little bit more in the future.
I'm so tired of Zoom, I was like, I don't want to get stuck on Zoom again. I'm over that. I have like pandemic Zoom trauma. I was going to watch your video on harvesting corn, but since we're here, when do you harvest corn? Yeah, we could go over to the corn patch and show you. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
And on Saturday, of course, you can see it better even. But here's our let's see if I'm doing that right. There's the sunflowers in the back. Those are purple seeded sunflowers that we're growing for the first time this year. We're very excited. They're kind of the mammoth versions. They're not as mammoth, I would say, as the Russian mammoth, but they're still pretty darn big. They're taller than we
they'll
are.
have an edible seed, and yeah, they're really nice.
Really cool, yeah. And then we've got a big squash patch here. I don't know if you can see it all, but there's some morning glories growing amongst the squash. And then this is like a good example of, and we're making our way to the corn patch, but along the way, this is a good example of interplanting the squash for seed, because so there's 4 different species of squash, and each year we pick one variety of each species to grow out for seed so that they don't cross pollinate. Because they're all different species, then they won't cross, and we won't end up with things like squumpkins, which is when like a pepo crosses with a maxima. Then you'll end up with something not very edible, kind of bitter and hard. So
we have 3 different species here. We've got a maxima, which is a Hopi pale gray, and then we've got a mixta, which is a Hopi kusha, which are really beautiful. We're very psyched about these kushas.
Yeah, you'll see them.
They're just very vigorous and
Saturday.
Excellent. And then I'm doing a zucchini and a yellow crookneck breeding project that I've been working on for many years. That has a lot of different colors and variation. So we'll head over to the corn patch.
Would you mind telling me, like, as I'm walking and stuff, are you able to see these images? Or does it just look fuzzy? We've got some Hopi rattle gourds here that we're super excited about they're hanging from the vines. All right, so here we are in the corn.
So yeah, so you can see different ones at different maturities here. So there's one that's pretty brown, and then back here you might be able to see that one's still quite green. So you'll see the tassels turn brown. That means they got pollinated. You can see the brown, and then you can see kind of what maybe you're used to seeing for sweet corn, that more tender white tassel. So what I'm looking for primarily is for all of the green to be, for all of the green on the husk to turn brown. So this one looks like a really good example. So generally, generally I want to wait till there's no green. Now sometimes, like if you have an ability to dry it well with a fan, and if you have a small enough crop, then a little bit of green on the cob can be okay. But we'll take this one off. There's a bean.
There's a bean tangled
up around it. I'll try not to break that vine.
Charlie needs gourds. Yeah, once we get the seeds out of the gourds, there'll be a lot of gourds available for people who want to make art. They're little ones though. They're only like 6 inches tall because they're like Hopi. They're for like rattles. It's starting to get a little fuzzy. Okay. Where it was before. Yay. We have an enormous Hopi pale gray. Oh, good. Yeah, we're going to get a bunch more this year.
You'll get like 100 seeds out of a big squash easily. That's fun.
Okay, we'll finish talking about the corn and then we'll go back over there and answer all these other questions.
So we've been getting a lot of rain. So at this stage, if all my corn was brown and I didn't have time to harvest it, or I didn't have a place to store it, oftentimes what people will do, they'll just break the corn and let it tip down like that. So I'm kind of disconnecting it from the plant, but I'm making it so moisture doesn't just go into the top of the corn and settle in. This one's a little wet. I don't know if you can see, it's a little more opaque. You can see the kernels through the moist spot. If I were to leave that on the plant for too long, you can get molds and stuff in there. So, they're fairly moist. So, I want to get them in. I clean off all the tassels. Sometimes if you break it off and there's still a piece of stalk on the bottom, I'll leave that on because there's still nutrients in that can continue to go into the plant. So, so you're first looking for color of the husk, and then I clean off all the fur. I break off. I don't know if you saw, I broke the little tip off there that had, maybe a little damage from some bugs chewing on it. And, depending on how much time I have, I'll clean out all the little kernels that didn't develop well, and just kind of clean off anything that could have bugs in it. And, so that I can stack it, or I can lay it on a screen with a fan under it. Or the other option would be to leave the husk on. And then tie them, in a string like that. And you could tie them above a patio somewhere where they won't get rained on. And as long as there's no worry of frost, they can be outside drying. And yeah, because we have so much, well, I don't know. There's various different ways, but yeah, you can either hang it, or you would lay it out so that there's air spaces in between. Ideally they're not really tight up against each other if they're still moist when they're drying. And then, I'll always just go check on them to make sure I don't see any signs of mold as they're drying. And, like I said, I'll pop off that little piece that, is just the parts that didn't get fertilized or that have some damage.
Sometimes there's little worms in there too that, you just want to take the wormy parts out so they don't continue to grow in your corn.
And if I had a very limited amount of corn, and I wanted to save every bit for seed, I would just set those aside and let them dry on their own. And I've got, 6 seeds on that. So, if your need is to multiply to the maximum extent, then by all means, let them dry, and then later you can see if they dried properly.
You want to go back?
That's about it as far as we'll sit down and see if you guys have any other questions about it. I'm gonna show them the morning glory.
Yeah, these morning glories are just pretty spectacular right now. Can they see it?
I'm just seeing. No, I think you're. Well, okay. Yep. Just walk closer now. Yeah, so these are great. So I did not plant a single morning glory seed this year here. So, with certain things like morning glories or certain kind of amaranth, I'm sure there's some others I'm not thinking of. You want to pick a spot in the garden where they can be forever. And in the spring, I don't end up tilling right under them because I want, or I might till really early in the spring before they're going to germinate. That can be okay. But once they start sprouting and germinating, then you want to stop cultivating the soil for your self-seeding plants. And, so basically all I did this year was pull out the thistles in the grass and just give a little more room to the plants. And so that's a pretty cool thing to have, a selection of flowers and edible crops that come back here. And, as long as you have a space where you don't mind them coming back, then it's an asset, so you want to plan your garden accordingly to that.
So Deb says her morning glories are turning yellow now. Is that because of the cold?
Okay. Are you getting any flowers yet, Deb? I'm not totally sure. The easy answer is that there's a lot of variables. I feel like maybe there's something with the nutrient, depending on how long it's been since they were.
Many flowers.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they might just be done.
I think, yeah, it can vary.
Are they starting to make seed?
Yeah, they'll have little pods. Ours have green pods. They don't have brown pods yet.
They're in coconut baskets. Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I think you could give them a little shot of nutrient.
Yeah.
They're generally potted plants. Yeah. They're a pretty heavy feeder. So just because they're so vigorous, if you imagine how tall a morning glory grows, oftentimes you can think that the roots have, the roots are a reflection of how big the plant is, so if it's in a little basket, then those roots are probably coiled all around and pretty much eating up all the nutrients. You may have plenty of nutrients and it might be something else. Sometimes you can have over nutrient and get yellowing too. So
Celine says, what about nasturtiums?
Nasturtiums, I love nasturtiums.
She has trouble getting hers to take off.
I haven't grown them in quite a few years, so I don't think I'd have an expert opinion if they can handle frost.
Can you eat the corn fresh? Yeah, so
totally. Yep.
The corn. Well, this is it's edible. It's a Charlie. Come here. Come on. Our dog's named Charlie. He came with that name.
Good boy. Okay, go on. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, so our corn, the rainbow corn, it's a grinding or masa corn, so you can eat it fresh, but it's very, very starchy. It's not like a sweet corn at all. So we never really do it that way. So you want to fully dry it out, and then we make masa out of it. And I can tell you that whole process. It is like a little bit of a process. You have to nixtamalize the corn with pickling lime, which
wood ash.
Wood ash is what the ancestral Puebloans and a lot of other tribes all over have used throughout Mesoamerica. Like juniper ash, for example. If you mix that in with the corn, then it takes there's an enzyme in here that we can't actually digest it. It makes it hard to digest. So the nixtamalization process gets rid of that enzyme, and then it makes it palatable. So I can definitely teach you maybe on Saturday how to do that whole corn process, because we make tortillas and tamales out of this and cornbread, and it's phenomenal. But it's kind of takes a day to do the entire thing, because it has to sit for 8 hours once you've boiled it in the lime water.
Yeah, and the processing helps.
The chips from Durango. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the processing helps take out some of the stuff that's not palatable, but it also releases some nutrient that you wouldn't get.
Oh, okay.
Also,
I didn't know that. Was cool. Yeah, I think the Zia Taqueria chips, those are nixtamalized. I think
Hmm.
most corn chips that you buy, even like commercially, I think they're all nixtamalized at this point. But
Yep.
that is like something that I wondered.
Yeah, probably most of
Yeah, I
them
can
are.
type it in.
And in the food industry,
Nixtamalized.
if you use an ingredient for the processing of it, it doesn't have to be in the ingredients. So if it just says pure corn, it can be nixtamalized without saying that that's an ingredient. Um,
But we eat these tortillas all the time. Like it's becoming a staple of our diet. It just took us a long time to like, have the crock pot and get the lime and figure out like for me, like figure out a sequence that I felt like I could incorporate it into my life because it's kind of a thing.
it's a lot of little steps. So even though you don't have to be sitting there the whole process, you have to plan ahead.
Okay, they both want to learn. So yeah,
Okay.
we'll just go over that on
Yeah.
Saturday.
And traditionally, you can eat it. At this stage, they would cook it maybe even at a little bit earlier stage before it's ready as like a dry corn. They would put it in a pit. They would heat up a pit and roast it in there, and then they would dry the roasted corn, um, and then pull it off the cob as they needed it throughout the winter. So, um, even though we do eat a lot of our own tortillas and stuff, and we've been making some tamales, we haven't even touched the iceberg of the amount of things that you can do with corn. Um, yeah, so there's a lot out there to be found as far as eating it. And a lot of people say this is ornamental corn because it's so colorful. And yeah, it is ornamental as well, but primarily, all those colors are your vitamins, and your minerals. There's one of our sweet corns. It's a red sweet corn, and it's got more of the nutrient that people eat blueberries for, the anthocyanin. It has 10 times more of that nutrient in it than blueberries. So, as far as really having a wholesome diet, I'm sure every color has its own unique vitamins that are associated with it.
Yeah, I'm gluten free too, so it's been nice to have tortillas. Which farmers market are we selling at? We go to Cortez, like we've been going like every 2 to 3 weeks to the Cortez market, and then sometimes to Dolores, but we got rained out last time. And then yesterday it seemed like there was a Saturday. The next Saturday we'll be at Cortez again.
I see a question about beans from Debbie. Welcome, Debbie.
Your favorite. Ross is a bean
I'm
head.
a bean enthusiast.
Bean enthusiast.
So the first things that come to mind is waiting until the pods are fully dry. That's ideal. All the green, similar to the corn, really, all the green should be off the pods, and you might even hear a little rattle when you shake the pods.
She's wondering. She says she had some beans that came up quickly and made a few pods and then stopped growing and dried out. The bean seed looks good. Should she keep them?
Yeah, as long as they're dry, and I think they're fully mature. It sounds like.
Yeah, but I would say if they just came up, well, it's a matter of preference. Ross will save like literally every single bean seed because he just loves them. But I would say if they just came up and made a few pods, and then was it a bush bean or a climbing? If it's a climbing bean, I wouldn't save those because then you're going to be selecting more for, fast seeding, and that's not what you want. You want them to like vegetate out for quite a while and make a lot of pods and then dry out.
Yep.
Even a bush bean, like if it's just a few pods, it could be like if it's like the soil or where you put it in the garden and you're sure like that's what it's a bush bean. Yeah, well, that's probably fine then to save them. But
generally with the bush beans, depending on how they're bred, if they're bred as a green bean for picking, then sometimes they respond well to that. Where if you pick them, they just continue flowering because they want to make seeds. Whereas if if they might be, depending on where you got them from, and maybe some of ours have that tendency too. But let's see.
I was worried it might be a bad trait to keep if they die too quickly.
Yeah, possibly. It all comes down to what if you're going for dry beans in general, then it doesn't sound like a great trait. I would want to get a lot of seeds out of each plant.
Especially if you have other plants from that same variety that made a lot more, then that's a pretty obvious thing, would be to replant those ones, But if you don't have a lot of seed and you just want to keep proliferating it, then there's no problem with keeping those ones and planting them again.
Yeah, unless you're getting antsy about eating it in a stew, a small amount of beans you can stick away for a rainy day. But that said, I've always been trained, because I want to save every seed. I've always been told, well, try to find the ones that are best suited for your needs, and then focus on proliferating those. So, yeah, I would suggest, considering whether you're confident that your soil is good. If they were planted late in the real heat, maybe they went to seed quickly, or try to consider all the variables. And then if that was the only bean you planted, it's a little harder to compare. If there were other beans you planted, then maybe, or if in future years planting a number of varieties, even if you plant a smaller number of seeds of each, then it helps you be able to identify, which things are actually traits of the plant and which things are environmental.
I see there's another person here. If you want to just type into the chat, we would love to know who you are. I'm not sure if I can see that on my end. Yeah, it says 3.
That's all 3 of them.
And if you have any questions you brought.
That's Debbie, Cindy, and... Okay.
That's because it doesn't count us in the 3.
There's 2 though. There's 2 Debbie A and Deborah.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, I think.
Well, then there's a... Okay.
This is our first time on here, so.
Are you... Oh, so Debbie's under Deborah Nickel and Debbie A. Is that what you're doing? I guess so. Okay. So it may not be due to genetics, but rather the environment. Yeah, totally.
Yep. And if you get any seeds from us and certain ones, do things that aren't desirable or whatever, we won't be offended if you're like, well, this one didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do, or, why didn't it do this? It's like, okay, these are things we need to know as well. How do they perform in people's gardens? So, and we might have a better suggestion on a variety. Let's see.
Well, we're at 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Yeah. So if there's any other questions,
Yeah. We
could also...
There are 2 Debs here. Probably both born in the 50s. Oh, okay. That's what happened. There are 2 Debs here. I was so confused. Yeah. I was like, what? Okay. Hi, Debbie. Sorry about that. We're still learning this YouTube thing. I think you got on later, but this is our first time.
Lean in to read it, but
yeah, any other burning questions, and then we'll wrap up for the day, and we'll see at least you 2 at the Saturday workshop. Ooh, it's starting to thunder. Good timing.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys hear the thunder, but
Celine says I have to take off. Thank you so much. Do I need to call ahead and register? No, you can just show up and pay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Are you coming with Allison, or is it just going to be you? Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Hope to see you again. See you Saturday. Okay, great. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll just wrap up then. Just me. All is in Allie's in Bozeman. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. Well, see you then.
So we'll just let this post to our channel so that other people can watch it in the future. And this is all educational material. So if anybody in the future sees this, it's just for education, and that we appreciate your time, everybody. So thanks for
I'll
joining
email
us.
you, Celine. I'll email you the directions. All right. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Okay, appreciate it.